I'm Arjun Harindranath. I'm from LatAm.tech, the editor where we cover Latin American startups and innovation. And we're talking today with Albert Santalo from 8base. And we're going to cover a little bit about the entrepreneurial journey, because you've had experience with 3 startups in your life. I wondered maybe if we could start off a little bit with 8base, if you could tell us a little bit about the company.
Yeah, so it's great to be here. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So it's actually, I've had more experience in 3 startups, but 3 that I've been in the lead role. So I've been around startups in Miami pretty much all my career. I've been in Miami for 40 years, and my latest company is called 8base, founded in March of 2017. And 8base is really the culmination of 30 years of me in business, starting out as an engineer, but being around enterprise software all these years, and thinking that why is enterprise software so hard? And so what 8base is a platform that allows people of limited technical proficiency to build their own software with either no or little involvement from engineers. And that's an evolution. It's not completely there today, but that's what it's on its way to doing.
So walk us through it. So you are someone like a customer within a developing country. How would they be using 8base?
It could be a developing country, or it could be here in the US, or anywhere in the first world. So businesses today are under threat of digital disruption. There's all sorts of classic examples like Netflix and Uber and Airbnb disrupting traditional industries. But the truth is that the mom and pop brick and mortar business down the street, all the way up to those big enterprises, are all under the threat. And it's estimated that $2 trillion a year is going to be spent on digital transformation over the next few years. And so what 8base does is helps businesses put their arms around digital transformation. Software is at the heart of this. You've probably heard the saying, software is eating the world. Well, we just make it easier for you to get that software in place.
And I read you're the son of Cuban refugees as well.
Yes.
I think a lot of people would be interested in how that journey took place, from perhaps coming from a family that maybe didn't have too much to having been instrumental in these sort of 3 companies.
Yeah. So my parents, I guess they met in the United States, but they both left Cuba in the early 1960s when Castro took power. And as you and I discussed, they like to be called refugees and not immigrants because they left for political, not economic reasons. And, like a lot of Cubans, they quickly established themselves in the United States, struggled, worked very hard to give their children a great upbringing, and instilled a sense of fairness, hard work, and free enterprise. They're devout. The interesting thing about Cubans is that although they're Cuban, they're great Americans, and they're great capitalists.
I wonder if you could speak to that experience of this entire generation of children of not just Cubans, but Colombians, Venezuelans, who took on that sort of entrepreneurial spirit to start up initiatives within the Miami business scene.
Yeah, so that's one of the great things about Miami is that it's so multicultural. And having been here for so long, I've seen this evolve quite a bit. In the early days, Hispanics in Miami were literally Cubans, but now it's very much a cross-section of Europe and Latin America. And so that diversity has brought great things here. And you've seen a lot of entrepreneurship take place in Miami, partially because it's a gateway to Latin America, and even people that are in Latin America decide to come to the US, they come to Miami to start businesses. And there have been efforts on our side to help attract those businesses.
How has it changed from the city of Miami's standpoint? Have they made it a point to be more conducive to this generation of Latin American pioneers, or American pioneers from Latin America?
Yeah, look, I think that this community is, very quickly putting its arms around how to support entrepreneurship. And that's an evolution. There's some examples in the United States of communities that have done this really well. Probably the one that comes to mind for me is Austin. New York as well, but New York is sort of an outlier because of its sheer size. But I think Austin is a great example. And there have been efforts here to help prop up entrepreneurs. And probably for me, the one that comes to mind the most, the sort of an unsung hero to a certain extent, is the Knight Foundation. Because the Knight Foundation has sort of been behind the scenes helping some of the people that help entrepreneurs, and not doing it directly, but pumping money into those organizations to help people. So, I think we still got a long way to go, but we're certainly on the right track.
When we had a chance to speak shortly before, you talked about being able to pick perfect times to start companies. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about when you started the other two companies?
So these are either the perfect times or the worst times. I'm not sure. I guess it worked out. But my first company was started in 2001. So it was a year after the dot-com bubble burst, and I left my job in October of that year. So it was a month after 9/11. So it was interesting times. And it was a terrifying experience. Those of you that are old enough to remember business in '01, the front page of any newspaper, any magazine was some tech entrepreneur that had blown it. Tech entrepreneurs, especially young ones, were the scourge of the economy. And so here I was, a pretty relatively young guy, but I did have 4 kids and a wife who was a school teacher, trying to be an entrepreneur for the first time. So it was an absolutely terrifying experience, but I was able to raise capital the following year, and then raise, so that was angel investment, and then raised venture capital the year after, and grew the company successfully. And then in '09, founded CareCloud. So that was the second time in an awesome economy, because it was January of '09, right after the meltdown, and this time it was a little bit different, a little older, a little more experienced, and raised $2.8 million of angel investment in that year, which I heard a statistic once that in the entirety of the U.S. there was only $100 million of angel investment raised, and here CareCloud, a startup in Miami, with literally a PowerPoint presentation at the time, raised $2.8 million. So we were pretty proud of that. And then the following year raised another $5 million, and then raised a $20 million Series A from Silicon Valley, and kept going. And so this time around, I started the company in 2017, not a bad economy. So we'll see, hopefully it works out as well or better. But when you do start things in downturns, there's advantages. People are unemployed, things are cheaper. When things are booming, you have a lot of competition. It's hard to sort of get to stand out from all the noise that there is. It's hard to get talent. So you just got to sort of move with the times. There's never, I would say, a bad time to start a company. You just have to know your environment and respond to it.
You talked about raising money following the dot-com boom and then the 2008 crisis. Have the rules changed at all in terms of how you go out there and make your pitch and try to grow your company?
Yeah, so the rules have completely changed. I can't think of any aspect of it short of you have to have a great reputation to go do this stuff. If you don't, that's gotten harder because, we live in a bubble now. Everyone can see who we are and what we've done. So protecting your reputation at all costs is probably the best, the most important advice I could give anybody. That's more important than do anything it takes to succeed, because, success at all costs is not worth it. So everything else has changed, right? So in many ways, entrepreneurship has gotten easier through things like Amazon Web Services. 20 years ago, you were starting a tech company. Your first $500,000 was about provisioning office space inside your office with special air conditioners and halons and servers that you had to go out and buy. Today, you can just go to Amazon and you can get started for like 17 cents a month, or really free as you can get started. So that helps a lot. Things like WeWork, believe it or not, help tremendously, because one of the scariest thing an entrepreneur ever does is sign a permanent office lease. 5-year, 10-year lease, oftentimes requiring a personal guarantee, used to be this terrifying thing. Now you can go to WeWork and rent a desk part-time, and as you scale up, you you take on more space. So things like that have shown up in the world, making all of this easier. I would add to that people like the Y Combinator and organizations where the best minds around this stuff sort of congregate have come up with so many best practices that if you really just want to study them, you just go out there, you understand what's being said, and then you apply it, and you become a lifelong learner around these things that can really help you. Certainly in 2001, there was none of that. The way you finance companies has completely changed, the type of instrument you use for that. And then, you know, the last thing I would say on that topic is that even us at 8base are trying to put a dent in entrepreneurship. We're trying to make it so that a software entrepreneur can literally get started faster, better, cheaper on the 8base platform and cut down their time to market significantly, cut down their capital requirements significantly. This is not an immediate thing, but this is something that we think will take effect over the next year or so. And again, it's all about sort of putting the power of starting a business into everyone's hands, democratizing that whole movement.
And you work out of WeWork, but you also have this satellite office in Russia, is that right? I mean, it's
which is not at a WeWork.
Yeah, it's 2018. Collusion with Russia is completely fashionable now, so it's not an entirely big issue. But could you tell us a little bit about how that came about?
Yeah, so it's an amazing thing, you know. So every community has talent issues. You know, we talk about South Florida having a shortage of technology talent. You know, I think every geography has this problem, even Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley, your problems are different. There's an abundance of them, but getting them is expensive, keeping them is really hard. You know, there's other challenges there. And so the best way I know to solve this is to sort of make the world flat and source your talent from where you can, you know, where you can best find it and hold on to it. And so I was very fortunate that my head of technology had a lot of experience managing offshore efforts. He's based here in Miami, he's Russian, and so he convinced me that we should set up an offshore operation in Russia. And so we did that, and we have an office in St. Petersburg with about 7 engineers over there that have done an absolutely phenomenal job building, you know, helping to build our product. We design it here, and then they do a lot of the construction offshore. And it works well. We literally are working at 8base pretty much 24/7 by virtue of that, and it's been relatively inexpensive. A lot more, you know, a lot less expensive than it would have been if we were doing this in Miami completely.
I read blockchain was a very large part of your platform. Is it entirely blockchain, or is it, you mentioned earlier there was parts of it that weren't as well?
Yeah, so we think blockchain is a very important technology. My personal opinion is it's here to stay, and it's developed by genius. It has its applications, but it's not the end-all be-all. It's not everything. It's not the cure to everything. And so 8base is a company that helps people build software. That software can be blockchain-based, or it can be non-blockchain-based. It's blockchain agnostic, so we don't necessarily say that any one blockchain is the winner and is going to solve every single problem. But we say that, you know, we should help people build applications that are blockchain or otherwise. If you've ever used a blockchain-based application, I venture to say that the experience is not awesome today, either by virtue of its speed or maybe more importantly by its user experience. And so those are some of the problems that we hope to solve, especially the user experience one, because most of the blockchain development that's been done has been done by very technical people that aren't necessarily front-end developers or have thought too much about that. But if blockchain is going to be here to stay, it's got to be software that's at least as good as the stuff we use every day. The fact that it's decentralized is not a big enough reason for most people to care. It's got to be better software.
Thank you, Albert. Of 8base, really appreciate your time today for joining us in the elevator. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.